Happy Wealth Wednesday, Porter. I'm so excited to have you here today. It's been incredible to get to know you through the SheFi community and just your incredible background everywhere from Deloitte all the way into this world of crypto and dispatch, which I can't wait to dive in more with you today. So I'd love if you'd kick off with just a quick about you. Where are you calling in from? And what are you up to these days?
Calling from Charleston, South Carolina, home with my family for the holidays. And recently I have been spending most of my time in Austin, Texas, but working at Dispatch, which you mentioned, in a partnerships and business development role. We're focused there on what we consider an engagement protocol, which I'm really excited to dive into later. But you can think about it in a way of being sort of like a CRM and a Mailchimp for Web3. So doing some cool stuff that I think a lot of people are thinking about these days, and I'm excited to share more.
I can't wait. I know a lot of people are sort of thinking about in this bear market, what is the next wave and frontier? And there's a lot of talk about marketing, what marketing in a decentralized world will look like. So I'm very excited to hear what Dispatch and what you're thinking. But first, we always ask the same question. It's really disarming, and I really love it. And it's, what is the first ever investment you made? What got you started?
So the first investment that I ever made was probably like towards the middle end of high school. And it actually wasn't a particular security, but it was actually a platform called Ellevest. And so Ellevest was started by Sally Krawcheck, who's a very prominent professional in the financial services industry. And she started this organization with the mission to get more money into the hands of women. And so the ways that they do that have expanded over the years, but I started out with them when you just explicitly thinking about getting money into structuring an ideal portfolio. So they show you different options based on a couple different factors. So I had to basically indicate a couple of things around my interests, my risk tolerance, several major goals I had for my life, and then allocate certain amounts of money. And they basically help you build a portfolio around what's best for you. And I just really thought that was a super amazing that this type of resource was existing. And alongside a really, really deep collection of educational content they offer as well. So the experience was really something that helped me to boost my confidence when it came to approaching greater financial obstacles and setting bigger financial goals in my life more generally. I also just remember like when I started using Ellevest for the first time, it felt really, really accessible. And so both from a product design standpoint and also from information access standpoint, it was really clear to me like why certain products were included in my portfolio. And then I also could use Ellevest to go learn more about the decisions they were making. So for example, I was approaching this primarily from a personal brokerage account perspective. But then they also helped me to open my first Roth IRA and had awesome resources within the site to help me determine, if a Roth versus a traditional IRA was best, and also how that would be comparing against a 401k. So I was in college at the time and didn't have a 401k yet.
So my next question is more about what role you feel you play in the wealth space today and why. And I know there's Dispatch, but also you played a pretty significant role in the creation and, management of SheFi to become what it is today too. So I would love to hear, what role you're feeling you've played or play in the wealth space.
I think I really am able to help reduce information gaps for other people to kind of make them feel more comfortable or well informed and sort of enabled to take action based on what they know or maybe what they don't know yet. And so what I mentioned before when talking about Ellevest, I actually really tried to share this platform with friends and peers as I felt like it was a really big gateway to better financial health and just general understanding of the financial world that we live in. And so I think when I found Maggie and SheFi, Maggie is the founder of SheFi for those who don't know, I really further grew in that kind of role because I was partially responsible for creating what would be a lot of women's first experience with crypto and blockchain and Web3. And so that's a really powerful position to be in. But it meant that what I was saying or teaching in my demos and teaching assistant sessions was really, really important. And so I try to approach these situations by making information super clear and accessible and digestible, and also by creating a really safe, no judgment environment for asking questions as well. I never want someone to think they can't ask me something because it's a dumb question or something like that. So I feel like now I'm still able to play this role, albeit sometimes in slightly different ways now that I'm at Dispatch in a full-time position, we approach our project and our work by saying we're the new KYC, or know your community. And I've actually really enjoyed working with various project leadership teams to help them engage and learn from their user base or their customer base. So this was really the initial idea for Dispatch, was reducing information asynchronicities that exist between project companies and end users. So initially, we actually looked at investor communications approach. How can we help end users or token holders to know what they're buying and stay informed and connected to the institutions issuing them these tokens? And so I'll share more on what we've been focusing on recently, but I think the company mission or approach was really what drew me into the role. And so definitely feel like I'm still consistently leaning on reducing information gaps for people.
I love it. I know you've already started to dive in a little bit about Dispatch, and I would love to hear, in this world of like decentralized marketing, and maybe even for the listeners today to understand how you would even do that. Like, how can you communicate with somebody that's an anonymous wallet address, for example?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most exciting thing you've learned that you'd want others to know?
Yeah. I think, well, there's two questions there. I think from like an objective perspective on Dispatch operations side, we reach people actually through NFTs, through 1155 NFTs. And so we've had a really, really exciting past year working on establishing NFTs as a communication primitive rather than exclusively, a collectible or a PFP or maybe a membership token. As we know, like NFTs are super dynamic media sources. They're very visual and engaging. So who's to say that can't be a communication channel as well, when the only information we often have about customers and users is that wallet address? And so kind of twofold to make sure people embrace this new standard of communication. We're really interested in exploring partnerships with wallets and renderers to ensure the end user has the best experience possible. So last week, we actually announced an integration with Ledger, and you can now access any of your Dispatch messages in an inbox by Dispatch direct in Ledger Live. So that is actually really, really exciting. It's the first Web3 inbox of its kind. So that obviously is super exciting. We're thrilled about that and continuing to move forward in that space. But more generally, the most exciting thing I think I've learned has really been the trends I've been seeing since at Dispatch, is that sometimes while there's negative or maybe questioning media representation of Web3, there are hundreds of major brands and enterprises and just companies that we're all familiar with on a day-to-day basis who are making moves to enter Web3. And so I think I want people to remember that this space really has so much to offer. And many of the companies that we know and love are also realizing this and finding really creative ways to launch themselves into the Web3 ecosystem. And so when you're seeing more and more mainstream adoption, I think it's like a really awesome signal to pay attention that exciting stuff is happening. And it's really an opportunity for creativity and innovation. And so I just kind of want people to keep in mind that there's still a lot happening. And as I mentioned with Dispatch, at our core, we're thinking about like communication and engagement on chain. And so information that end users should have access to is really important to us. And we really have seen the opportunity, as I mentioned, to enable this information sharing and engagement with all of the brands and institutions that are entering Web3. So we've actually shifted and expanded our focus a bit at the moment from what I previously touched on. There are a ton of possibilities for how campaigns or how companies can speak to and engage their users, and also things like shifting marketing campaigns on chain or enabling companies to sell goods, perhaps both physical and digital, direct in a user's wallet. So things like even sourcing feedback via polls or fun trivia in a Web3 native way. Those are things that really allow companies to collect detailed engagement data and bring that into a CRM that supports Web2 and Web3 data. So those are some of the things we're exploring, and super excited to see if and how we can unlock this whole new way for organizations to engage and activate their customer base. So I think it's a bit of an untapped market, and we're really excited to learn and grow in the space.
I love it. Is there a person or company that you've come across that's really inspiring you, and why?
Yeah, one of my friends, Micah Isogawa, is the founder of Webacy. And so Webacy's tagline is simply, they're the protection layer for self-custody. But Webacy is really a suite of security products to help users better manage their crypto, particularly in the long term, which I really love. So I've been a beta user for the past couple months, and I've really loved watching the feature suite expand. And I feel like WebC is a really strong reflection of the fact that we just need better security in crypto, and not in the short term, but also in longer periods of time, like through the end of your life. And so Micah and her team have created a platform that lets you get text notified when there's activity in your wallet, create a crypto will via a smart contract to, allocate your assets to someone else after you pass or in an event of crisis. And then also to set up backup wallets and even select a panic button if something goes wrong and you want to prevent any funds from being withdrawn in the future. So I really love that that's a feature suite. And I've actually have plans to set up some of my close family members with their own WebC accounts for Christmas. And I've set some of my close family members actually as beneficiaries for me in the event that something were to happen. So it's been a really exciting space to watch evolve. And I just have loved the energy that Micah and her team bring to the space and feel like she's very brilliant and thoughtful. And the WebC platform super reflects that.
Cool. I can't wait to check that out. I think that's so important, and legacy planning and all of that has been a big topic for some time. So thank you for sharing. So what advice would you give to somebody getting started?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things was I kind of felt like I started in a silo a bit and was kind of out here wandering on my own. And I really feel now, particularly having worked with SheFi and having to just generally educate people around me, is finding a friend or peer that you can jam on topics with is like a really, really awesome way. There's so much information you can get lost in. And I feel like having someone to lean on and you can narrow your focus and look at only certain resources, or even having that comfort with someone to ask questions when you're confused is really helpful. I also think there's a lot of opportunity for you to like build accountability when you have a peer. And then it also keeps you potentially able to practice evaluating potential investments, or even if you want to start doing something together, you could co-invest in projects together. There are a lot of cool projects in Web3 too that kind of enable that peer and partner ownership. And so I think having a friend or two along the way is a really great way to begin the learning, but also make sure that you stay in the learning phase for as long as possible.
And given the industry you're in with the CRM world and marketing campaigns, we're seeing more and more professionals come into the industry who may not feel like the first path for them is maybe like a cohort or a peer, but they feel like they need to get very quickly connected to a credible source of information within their industry. So for example, marketing. Do you have any ideas for somebody getting started as a professional trying to navigate how to apply it to their business or their industry?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest questions we get at SheFi, where people are kind of like, oh, I don't know how my skills translator, what I'm doing today, really ties to what I could be doing in Web3. And I think like the most important thing to note is the skills that you have are incredibly transferable across the board. It's really the context that's changing a bit. And I think it's important to know that in any job, you can be super qualified, but the bulk of your learning is going to be done once you're in that experience. And so I think recognizing that is incredibly important, but honestly, subscribing to platforms like Eve Wealth and doing things like SheFi, I think are really impactful ways to build a community and also learn at the same time. And I think just leveraging other women or other people's experiences is one of the best ways to kind of introduce this industry into your place of work and things like that. So there's a lot of resources and it can be super overwhelming. So no, this is probably like, where do I start question? But I think those are some really easy ways to start to get a grip on it.
I love that. That's super helpful. And anything else we should know? How can we follow you personally on your journey and whatever you're putting out into the world? And then also Dispatch.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Porter Geer, just my full name. And also on LinkedIn, the same address, but feel free to reach out. My DMs are open. Dispatch is also on Twitter at DispatchXYZ. But if you're actually interested in receiving updates in a super dispatch friendly way, we have an on-chain following where you effectively can subscribe to updates with your wallet. You can check that out via our website under the Dispatch community. You just follow, connect your wallet, and then you are subscribed to future on-chain updates. So don't want to give too much alpha on that, but I think that's a fun way to stay plugged in with the community.
So I love it so much. I'm really excited about what you're building and just how you've been such an incredible resource and friend and connector in the space. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll definitely be following along in the future.
Awesome. Thank you.